Let's break this down. Harsh Rungta is a tax expert and he's a strong proponent for tax reforms. He joins us. And also to understand the political compulsions that have led to this and implications as well, senior journalist Madhava Narayanan is with us. Gentlemen, welcome to our continuing coverage of Budget 2025 here on ET Now. Good to have you with us. But tell us, in your opinion first, Harsh, we were talking about this on the eve of the presentation of the budget, the need for the government to support the middle class. Now that it has happened, do you think they've gone too far or do you think they've done just right?
If you look at it, I mean, they've just balanced it. In the corporate tax cuts, that time had amounted to a giveaway of 1 lakh crores, but that was way back in 2019. And now in 2025, about 5.5 years later, the tax cuts are another 1 lakh crores, this time to individual taxpayers. And I think it is a balancing act. As we discussed just yesterday, the corporates have not really invested back in increasing production capacity. Consumers are most likely, in fact, or might be forced to spend the money. And therefore, definitely it is likely to boost consumption. And definitely this is going to be very popular, because this is a headline thing that everybody sees. And I mean, this is something that is visible for the salaried class at the end of the month. At the end of the month, the number for tax will come down.
Yes.
Might go down to zero for a number of people, and therefore it is it's going to be a very popular move. Any of the impact only happens after some time, as
yes,
if at all that impact happens, and therefore I think this is well justified, and I think this was
expected. You're saying this was something that was expected, at least by tax reformers like you, and it has come. Der aaye, lekin durust aaye, and we'll discuss that a little bit as well. Madhava Narayanan is waiting to speak to us. But Mr. Narayanan, before I speak to you, I just want you to hear what the finance minister has said. This is something that she spoke about, and I want to ask you whether there is a shift in ideology when it comes to the BJP. Just listen to what she said first.
The great Telugu poet and playwright Gurujada Apparao had said, Deshamante matti kadoy, Deshamante manushuloy, meaning a country is not just its soil, a country is its people. In line with this, for us, Vikasit Bharat encompasses zero poverty, 100% quality good school education, access to high quality, affordable and comprehensive health care, 100% skilled labor with meaningful employment, 70% women in economic activities, and farmers making our country the food basket of the world.
There you heard it from the finance minister in Parliament, Mr. Narayanan. Do you think this is an ideological shift of the ruling party?
Yeah, I think the answer is yes and no. Let me explain, Vikram. Let's go back to the 1990s, when I was an active correspondent covering economic reform, when there was a so-called Narasimham Committee on banking reform that was supposed to be adversely affecting bank sector employees. Now, the BJP at that time, considered to be right-wing economic party and all that, started supporting the bank unions because they said we will not alienate and antagonize the middle class. The BJP itself is a middle class party with its origins in traders as well as some of the lower middle class, people like school teachers and bank clerks and people like that. So to that extent, there is no social constituency shift. But however, if you just heard Nirmala Sitharaman's quote that you played out so beautifully, it shows that the BJP has shifted from being a growth-oriented, economic ideology to a welfarist economic ideology more than before.
Right.
But let me also say three things which I think should make us think deeper. Let me throw, you call it a googly, so let me decipher the googly, because it's supposed to be a
Yes, but allow me this moment to go across, because I just want to get in the personal finance expert's take on this as well. If it is this pivot, how crucial was it at this point in time, according to you? Because the need was heightened over a period of time. We haven't seen budgets really address the needs of the common man, of the middle class, Harsh. Now that it has come, critics are arguing that this move could strain public finances, that we may have done too much with a 1 lakh crore rupee revenue loss. Do you think that's the case?
Well, the question of, as I said, I mean, when 1 lakh crore was given away to the corporates, to bring that in line, bring our rates in line with the immediate neighbors and the rest of the world, I don't think there were those noises were not raised, and maybe this is what you're right. The fiscal numbers, I've not had a very detailed look, but the fiscal numbers do look a little strained and a tad optimistic to sort of say the least.
Yes.
But my point is that the when you get a bonanza like this, it is normally also accompanied by some sort of a kick in the backside. Fortunately, that is not there very clearly in this budget. There is no quote unquote negative tax or any new tax proposal in that sense.
That's right.
So
but that
I think it was very much needed. I would say it was very much needed.
Right, very much needed, but you're saying it's a tad optimistic for the kind of targets they've set on the fiscal deficit front as well. But Mr. Narayan, and coming back to you, this opposition, they have been accusing this government of neglecting the middle class for the most part. Now with these tax breaks, has the government effectively silenced them, pulled the rug from under their feet, so to speak, or do you think the opposition can still build a counter-narrative despite what is being announced in the budget this time?
The opposition has been certainly frozen on the tracks by what I call headline management. You know, I found most of the TV anchors ignoring substantive budgetary proposals and discussing only the middle class relief for tax slabs. So that is a wonderful diversionary tactic as well as a headline management tactic. And to that extent, the opposition is certainly frozen on the track. But let me also, for the benefit of your viewers, try to be a little naughty and talk about how picture abhi baki hai mere dost. Let me state 3 things for you, just to decipher what I call the googly that you described. Googly is supposed to be a ball, leg break, off break disguised as a leg break. So the question is this a form of is there a fine print somewhere? Some people say, let's wait for the income tax bill that is proposed to see if there's any fine print. We'll wait for that. Jury is out. Second thing I want to say, which is a very clever ploy, which is that if the middle class has a 12 lakh exemption, there are some people finding it too good to believe and find out if you're earning about 12 lakh, will you be still taxed at 4 lakhs slab because if there's any fine print. I don't think so.
Right.
But having said that, where does all the money go? Let's go back to our Keynesian economics basics. Every bit of money is either consumed or saved. Savings equals investment, because savings typically go into a house or shares or mutual funds.
Yes.
So that saving part goes into capex. So it need not be called populist while being popular. That is a very good thing. On the other hand, if it's consumed, let us look at GST. So my naughty question to everybody is, if the GST takes away what your income tax relief gives you, you're still paying tax to the government, and to that extent, it is also a clever googly. But it is a googly that empowers you to either save or consume as you like. For instance,
let me ask Harsh Rungta.
There's one mutual fund advertisement.
Mr. Ranganathan, let me again interject and ask Mr. Rungta whether he agrees with you on this. Do you? Harsh, what do you make of what Madhav Narayan is indicating over here? Do you think there is some amount of naughtiness that might have played up in the budget this time when it comes to giving with one hand but actually taking away with another? Because we were talking about the impact of direct and indirect taxes. Do you think some of that is at play?
So, but that is pretty standard playbook, right? I mean, if people are going to save money, I mean, if there is going to be more left in their hands, as Mr. Narayanan very rightly put it, you will either invest it or you will spend it. And if you do end up spending it, then obviously part of that revenue flows back, part of it only flows back to the government as GST. So part of that savings will go to the government as GST, but that's pretty standard. I mean, that's what the government will bet on, and that's the reason why the giveaways were put in the first place, right? Whether it was the corporate giveaways 6 years ago or now this particular giveaway now. So, I mean, there is nothing wrong with that expectation.
But it still begs the question, Harsh, whether this is overall good for the economy, because we had stalled, because growth was kind of slowing down, which is why it seems like the government has done a pivot and come to the rescue of the middleman, which was already long due. Do you think that is going to happen now? With this kind of pivot, is the positive for the economy going to come through?
Well, we'll know. I mean, it's very difficult to predict this right up front, because, you know, the economy is not made of one thing or the other, right? I mean, yes, it is a very major, it would be a very major factor, it would be a significant factor, but there are so many other factors at play.
Yes, of course.
I mean, and a lot of those factors have nothing to do with India. I mean, they could be factors that play in overseas, in the US or in other markets.
Yes.
There can be geopolitical factors. So not everything is controlled by a simple tax cut.
Right.
Yes, it is one input into what will happen, but I think we have to wait and watch to see what will unfold.
So there are moving
and it's
pieces.
Positive input.
There are
it's a
moving
positive
pieces.
input.
Mr. Narayanan.
There are lots of moving pieces.
Yes. There are lots of moving pieces. A lot of them are external in nature. A lot of experts and tax experts we've been speaking to all throughout here on ET Now to decode what the budget presents have been indicating that much as well. Chiefly, of course, what we are going to see on tariffs front from the US, from Donald Trump. And one understands that. But in terms of risk mitigation, in terms of a budget that would address those kind of risks as well, Mr. Narayanan, do you think that the government would find itself a little hard-pressed to be able to control that, considering that they are playing up the populist card, or even, like you call it, the popular card?
Let me deconstruct it in three angles with you. I'm very positive on this, not because I'm middle class. I'm personally gaining, of course. But let me make that full disclosure. But let me speak on behalf of three things. First is that with all the Trumpism going on, there's a certain uncertainty in the global markets.
Yes.
When that happens, when there is a positive sentiment on consumption expenditure, as well as a reasonably announced fiscal deficit, please remember, fiscal consolidation at 4.4% of the GDP is looking pretty decent in the global atmosphere today. So it's a calculated risk Ms. Nirmala Sitharaman is taking, and that is worth it, because the moment you project a stable economy with a fairly good, close to 7% growth, then that actually adds to the momentum of investment into the economy from abroad as a safe haven. So to that extent, it is a good thing. So some of the populism negative effects, if you see any, may be undone by some of the sentiments that weigh in favor of India. And second thing I want to say, which is a very interesting thing, because nobody is really catching this, this whole old definition of capital expenditure needs to change. Now, talking about human capital, that is also capital expenditure. And if I want to point out that last week's big news was the DeepSeek revelation.
Yes,
capital expenditure of only $6 million, only $6 million capital in the expenditure led to a fall in market cap of $600 billion in NVIDIA's share.
And
so this whole 1950s definition. So the whole 1950s
and more such
definition of
risks are
capital
around the corner. No one takes away from that. I mean, we haven't come out of a situation where risks and many external risks, global risks, geopolitical risks have always stood in the way of economic growth. We haven't had a period of time where they haven't. But at this point in time, one wonders when it comes to domestic policies.
But let me
but let me just finish my question. Yeah. Mr. Narayanan, I just wanted to ask you, considering the way domestic politics have played out, especially when it comes to the Revdi culture, something that the Prime Minister has raised, and now we're seeing some of that getting played out in election after election as well. With the kind of benefits going out to the middle class, has the entire debate about Revdi culture, the freebies debate, has that come to an end? Or do you think we are still going to continue with that?
two very quick points. All parties are now giving reveries or so-called freebies. Because if you look at the Delhi election manifesto, there's no difference significantly between BJP, Congress and Aam Aadmi Party. So to that extent, everybody is now pro-freebie. But personally, I don't call them freebies. I prefer to call them vote bees because they are in exchange for vote. There's no such thing as a free lunch and there's no such thing as a free vote. Let me also say I prefer to call it actually development dividend. You know, ordinary people need to feel like stakeholders in the economy. So they don't have stock options. So this is the way of keeping them motivated. So I am positive on this because it goes to the bottom of the pyramid. Come on, they will build homes with this. They might, you know, 1,000 rupee freebie could mean 1 lakh rupee EMI on a 1 lakh rupee loan to build a Prime Minister Pradhan Mantri Awas Yojana house. So let us not be too cynical.
Right.
Freebies are a fancy term. But yeah, we need to watch it, right. But it doesn't mean that we have to be completely cynical and negative about it.
Not cynical and negative, but does this end it? Yes, Harsh, you were saying something about it, and I wanted to ask you about the trickle-down effect as well.
Debate, within the
Yes, I'm just asking Harsh about this as well. Harsh, what do you make of this? Going by what Mr. Narayan is indicating, because even when we spoke on the eve of the presentation of the budget, we were talking about the trickle-down effect of the government's approach so far, which was about capex and what it really comes to within the economy and being able to support it. Now, when we are going down this route by giving direct benefits to the middle class, is that going to work out better? That's the question.
So I think that's a clear pivot that's been taken. I mean, the capital expenditure, clearly the government is finding that there is only so much capital expenditure that they can do, and even the ability to do that capital expenditure itself is under question. But I wanted to just take the focus a little away from the tax cuts, because look at some of the other announcements which are just there in the speech. One is the long delayed CKYC. Okay. Now, CKYC would be like the UPI movement for not just the financial sector, almost all segments of the economy, because I think KYC has become an internal passport that is needed to navigate the economy for anybody. And a CKYC that actually works can bring down costs significantly. It has a huge lubricating effect on the entire economy. In fact, it can add many basis points.
So you're saying that
GDP growth.
So what you're saying, Harsh, is that the government is not just handing out these tax benefits to the middle class, but is creating an ecosystem, because we talked about simplification as well. An entire approach when it comes to addressing the needs of the middle class, that is being done through this budget. Do you agree with that, Mr. Narayanan?
Yeah, in fact, I would say, let me take you to the other extreme. I fully agree with what Harsh says. Some of the investment-related things have been eased up because, in fact, this is a highly micromanagement-oriented budget. Nobody's really observed that because people are so lost in the income tax benefits. It has lots of small schemes that are specifically addressed that will need administrative clarity as well as detail to really for us to figure out what's the outcome as opposed to outlay. Now, two things here. One is that I'm impressed by the Pulses mission. Please understand, even under Rajiv Gandhi, there was a national Pulses mission. But we need to need it all over again because there is a shortage of pulses, especially after Ukraine war and stuff like that. So that's a good attempt because it's going to alter everything from crop mix to, protein consumption.
Yes.
So those kind of benefits.
Yes, but Mr. Narayanan, I understand that. We're talking about it in a holistic sense. Yeah. And this entire approach, when it comes to what they're trying to do for the agricultural sector, the kind of measures towards food security, as we are seeing in Pulses as well, and yes, supporting the digital economy and the startup economy, all of that is in evidence. But like we said, we called it a pivot for a reason. Is that something that is a preview of Modi 3.0, Mr. Narayanan?
I think it's a very, thanks for asking that question because I've been wanting to say something naughty on this aspect. Let's wait for the Bihar election and followed by that the Tamil Nadu and UP elections because some of the budget's positive effects may be outweighed by some of the farmers' announcements like MSP related announcements, minimum support price announcements are not made during the union budget. They are off budget items that have a budgetary impact either by increasing the fiscal deficit in some cases or by eating into the extra income put in the hands of the middle class through increased agricultural prices. I will wait for some announcements on that. Because
Several
Mr. Modi
announcements
is
would
an
be
astute
expected.
politician.
Yes,
So what
but-
he's done is to...
Yes, indeed. As far as the budget is
Yeah.
concerned, it's generally considered a preview of what is to follow, because these are policy statements, and now the follow-up action is something that we will be watching very closely, and whether we're going to stay on track, even despite the needs of electoral politics. If this government is decidedly on this path of being able to put more money in the pockets of the middle class, then how much more are they going to follow through with actions is something that we are watching very closely. But Madhavan Narayanan and Harsh Rungta, many thanks for joining us with your perspective on this. It's a pleasure having you as we continue our discussions here on Budget 2025. Time for us to take a very small breather. On the other side, my colleague Sumita Kareed is joining us from our Delhi studios, and we'll break this down even further. Do stay with us. We'll be right back here on ET Now.